Hey guys, welcome to this new green light shooting video. Today we are taking a big step. We're going to go over buying your first AR. My name is Chad. This is my good friend and cousin Brian. This dude is an AR expert. He knows these things inside and out. We're not going to cover really any of the real basic stuff. If you're interested in that, check out this video down here. It goes over just the very basic overview of an AR-15. So now that we've got that covered, let's just dive into what do you want to look for when you're buying your first AR.
You know, when I bought my first AR-15, it was probably the most intimidating experience I've ever had in my entire life. Because the last thing any guy wants to do is walk into a gun store and not know what he's talking about. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what we're going to do, is get you to a point where you can walk in and you can ask the right questions as you're going through the process.
Perfect.
The biggest problem with buying one of these is there's so many different options and configurations. These things are like the Lego of the gun world. You can interchange every little part with these, right? And you've got the other video that talks about that. So I want to start with, first of all, you already know that there's an upper and there's a lower to the AR-15.
Right.
The latest and greatest craze in the AR-15 world to try to get the price down is they've taken this lower component right here and they're now manufacturing what they call polymer versions of these. It basically means the lower here is plastic. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea, but you need to be aware of it because a lot of times you could walk in and you may leave with an AR-15 with a polymer lower, a plastic lower, and not realize that you've done it. So that's the first question you should ask. Okay. Is this thing polymer? And there's lots of resources on the internet that'll tell you the pros and cons of that. It will save you money, but as always, it comes with a price.
Perfect. Next up, I hear you want to check out barrel.
Let's talk about the barrel, and this is often overlooked because all barrels tend to look the same
from the outside.
From the outside, they look identical, but there's a couple things we need to worry about. First of all, the length of the barrel. These come in a lot of different lengths. The two most common lengths are 16-inch and 20-inch. In fact, 16-inch is what you see most commonly, and if you're after a rifle, kind of a general-purpose rifle, 16-inch is great. Okay. If it's going to be for any kind of long-range shooting, you may lean towards the longer 20-inch version. Okay. There's also a twist rate that you need to worry about with these, and you'll see that mentioned all over the place when you're talking about these 1 to 7, 1 to 8, 1 to 9. Yeah. And I don't necessarily want to get into the pros and cons of the different twist rates because we'd be here for the next half hour probably sorting that out. I will tell you, though, that a 1 to 8 twist is a really good starting point. It's a good general purpose. Good for hunting, good for self-defense. It's just a good general purpose twist rate. If you want to get into the specifics, if you think your AR is going to be used for something specific, go do a little research on the twist rate, but it's definitely a question you should ask when the salesman puts the AR-15 in front of you. What's the twist rate? The last thing to worry about with the barrel is they are not all manufactured equally. In fact, there's a huge difference between the quality of these barrels. In the cheaper AR-15s, they are not chrome lined, for example. Right. A chrome lined barrel is going to last a lot longer than a regular barrel, and it's the difference between will it last for 5,000 or 10,000 rounds or will it last for 20,000 rounds before the barrel has to be replaced. Now, for most people, that's not an issue. Most people will never put 5,000 rounds through their AR-15. You're talking about more money and ammo than the gun is worth at that point. But it is worth thinking about if you want to have it for a long time. Also, in the high-end AR-15s, the barrels are what they call cold hammer forged, or CHF. Okay. And that's another sign of really high quality and good longevity in the barrel. So ask about that when they put the gun in front of you. Tell me about the barrel, the twist rate, the length, the material that it's made of.
Perfect. So if we're going kind of the perfect, cost versus high quality, is there something we should be looking for in the barrel?
Yeah, I would definitely, if you're trying to go for kind of a mid-range, best bang for your buck, you're probably not going to be able to afford the cold hammer forged, which is okay. Okay. Again, we're the difference between maybe 15,000 and 20,000 rounds. Okay. In that range, but I would get something that's chrome lined.
Chrome lined. Got it. Okay, and then the other thing that people talk a lot about is like your hand guards, your rails and everything like that.
The hand guards and the rails, right. Now that's this section of the AR-15 right here. So this is where, as you're holding this, your hand is wrapped around that, right? Okay. And there's a couple different options here. On the cheaper side, all of the cheaper AR-15s are going to have basically your plastic hand guards right here. Nothing wrong with this. This is a great way to grip it, great way to hold it. This is not going to get real hot on you, so no problem here on the cheap end. As you go up in quality and as you go up in price, you start getting into rail systems. And people go, well, what's a rail system? Why do I want a rail system? Right. Well, first of all, that's what's going to, the handguard's going to come off and you're going to put rails on. The rails allow you to mount accessories.
Which everybody loves.
Everybody loves accessories.
That's
And if there's one cool thing about the AR-15, it's that there is no shortage of cool things you can bolt onto your rifle. Whether it's sights, whether it's grips, the flashlights, lasers, the list goes on and on. But it's rails that those accessories mount to. The rails come in a lot of different configuration. There's short versions of rails. There's long versions.
Okay.
And really the only downside to the rails are they're going to add some weight to your rifle. Right? Nobody wants to be packing around a big heavy rifle all the time. So the longer the rails and the bigger the rails, the more stuff you can mount, but the heavier your rifle becomes. Okay. The only other downside to the rails is the price. The AR-15s that have nice rail systems tend to cost a little more than the ones that don't. So ask about that again when the salesman puts the AR-15 in front of you, and you may want a nicer rail system.
Okay. And then I guess the last thing we want to know about is the guts of this thing, the bolt carrier group.
Right, yeah, the bolt carrier group is something a lot of people overlook when they're talking about one of these. So this is a standard AR-15 bolt carrier group. First of all, don't get turned off when the salesman starts using terms like, it's a full auto bolt carrier group. That doesn't mean your gun's going to shoot full auto, but they'll throw that out as a sign of quality, right? It means it can handle that type of pressure. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are cheap versions of bolt carrier groups and there are nice versions of bolt carrier groups, and they look very, very similar. There's no way, just like with barrels and twist rates and things like that, that we can get into all of the pros and cons of a bolt carrier group. Do a little research on that if you want, but definitely ask about it, because this is something that's important. For example, the really, really high-end bolt carrier groups are pressure tested, every single one of them as they come off the assembly line. What that means is they're extremely safe. Every single one of them has been through that kind of quality control. The low-end brands of AR-15s don't do that. They skip that step, and so you actually don't know necessarily what you're getting here. There's also things that they do on these, like coating them, sometimes coating them with nickel, coating them with other things so that they're slicker. That will improve the reliability of your AR-15. A cheaper bolt carrier group typically has no coating on it, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that you're going to need to keep it lubed a little more than you would otherwise. So lots of different things to think about with these, but definitely ask about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess one last thing we should touch on really quickly. We hit on this in the last video, but gas versus piston. I mean, there's a little bit of difference there.
There is, and there's almost a religious battle there when you talk about gas-driven versus piston-driven. And again, we could do probably another half hour just on the pros and cons of gas versus piston. I will tell you, though, that a true AR-15, if it wants to be a true AR-15, it has to be gas-driven. Now, there are some manufacturers that have gone out, like SIG, and created piston-driven versions. And what they're trying to do is take some of the elements that made the AK-47 so popular and move that design into the AR-15 style rifle. Ask about it when they put the gun in front of you. Do a little research on that so you know exactly what you're getting into when they put that in front of you. Yeah, for sure, I would make that a point of question for the salesperson. If it's a true AR-15, it'll be gas-driven, but there's a lot of them that look very similar. They're also piston-driven, and there's pros and cons.
Well, yeah, I think you covered really an awful lot of information real quick. So if you have any other questions for us, leave them in the comments below, or shoot me an email over at greenlightshooting@gmail.com. But a real quick recap. So give us just bullet points real quick.
Okay, the things you want to ask about, first of all, make sure that you know whether that lower is polymer or whether it's metal, right? Just double check that. Make sure you know about the barrel, the length, the twist rate, and the material that's inside of it.
Check.
Make sure you know what you're getting with the rails in terms of handguard versus rails, and ask about the bolt carrier group and the quality of it.
Okay, well there you go. So yeah, hopefully,
and of course the gas versus piston.
Yeah. Right. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you out. That gives you just kind of a starting point, if nothing else. Research those things he was talking about, learn a little bit more. But this will give you the right questions to ask that gun salesman when you go in there. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. If this helped you out, if you liked the video, please like the video. Share it and subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more good stuff coming. Once again, thanks so much to Brian for helping us out today. And yeah, just check these other 2 videos out, man. We've been putting a lot of work in. These 2 videos down here, if you haven't seen them, give them a view. And yeah, we'll see you next time on Greenlight Shooting. Thanks for watching. They're picking up this gun, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. SOCOM's starting to run it, and I think they got some contracts